Hi, I'm sure by now you are conversant with the combination of variables and constants in mathematics. So, in this lecture, we will consider another concept in mathematics called polynomials. But for this lecture, we'll talk about the introduction to polynomials. So, talking about the introduction to polynomials. How can we identify polynomials and the basic things you need to know about polynomials will be discussed in this lecture. Now, before we delve into what polynomial is, we have to take some time to establish some underlying principles such as monomials, which will enable us to understand the subject matter. The concept of monomial, which we are trying to talk about now, monomials, will serve as a building block for other concepts like the binomials, the trinomials, and so on and so forth, as they can all be derived from the monomials. The question is, what is monomial? A monomial is simply a mathematical expression consisting of a single term. So the first thing you have to note about monomial is they consist of a single term. A single term. In a more general term, a monomial is formed as a result of the product of the power of variables. I want you to take note. Non-negative integer exponent. Non-negative integer exponent. And by these, I'm just trying to say that they are formed from positive exponent. Is that understood? So, the meaning or the implication of a non-negative integer component is the positive exponent. So, we have positive exponents. Having said that, let us consider some examples of monomials. How can we identify a monomial when we see them? So examples of monomial. Examples of monomial are, the first one here is 21. 21 is an example of a monomial. We can also have example like 17x. Of course, from what we said earlier, we said monomials can easily be identified by having a single term. So 21 is a single term, 17x is a single term, and another example is 14x squared y. It's also an example of a monomial. We can also have other examples like 64x y squared z raised to power 3, and so on and so forth. So these are examples of monomials. But hold on, is 21 a monomial? That is the question that is put to us now. Is 21 a monomial? Of course it is. Let me show you why I said 21 is an example of a monomial. So 21. You realize that since we said any constant can be written as the combination of a constant and a variable raised to the power of 0 from our elementary knowledge, that is, we have that 21x raised to the power 0 can also be written as 21. Why? Because anything raised to the power of 0 is equal to 1. So if I multiply 21 by 1, I also have it to what? To be 21. So this holds for all constants since the quantity 1 is a multiplicative identity. I want you to also note that Monomials have limited applications in mathematics, but find expression when they are combined. So this takes us to another concept, which is the binomial. Binomial is the next concept we are going to consider. The binomial. And of course, what is a binomial? You should know from the word bi. Remember, the first one we discussed was monomial. So mono and mial. Mono means one. Okay? So if you talk about binomials, since bi means two, therefore binomial is simply the combination of two monomials. So we can consider some examples. Examples like 17 plus 19x. This is an example of a monomial. Why? Because this is an example of a binomial. Why? Because it is a combination of two monomials. This is the first monomial and this is the second monomial. Is that understood? So having said that, let us consider another example of a monomial. We can also have an example like 5y minus 17z. Also, we can have 24x y raised by 2 plus 14x cubed y raised by 4. These are all examples of binomials. Is that understood? Well, because this is a term. This is a term and this is another term. So the combination of two monomials, this on its own is a monomial, while this is also a monomial. So the combination of these two monomials give us a binomial. Alright, so let us go to the next case scenario, which is the trinomial. The trinomial. And I'm sure your guess is as good as mine, since we said monomial consists of just one term, that is a single term. Binomial consists of two terms. Of course, trinomials will be seen as polynomials consisting of three terms or consisting of three monomials. An example of trinomial could be seen as 3x squared minus 3y squared plus 2. These, of course, is an example of a trinomial. Why? Because this is a single term, this is another single term, while this is the third term. Since it is the combination of one term plus another term to give three terms, so we call it a trinomial expression. Let us consider another example. Let us say we have 6x raised by 3 plus 3x plus 5. Just like we saw in the first example under trinomial, since these consist of just three terms, we call it a trinomial. So finally, let us consider what polynomials are in the actual sense. Polynomial is simply a mathematical expression of one or more algebraic terms, each of which consists of a constant multiplied by one or more variables raised to a non-negative integer power. Like I said earlier, the knowledge of monomials and binomials is very crucial to our knowledge of polynomials. Then in a condensed form, that is, in a simpler term, a polynomial is any monomial. Please take note. A polynomial is any monomial or the sum of two or more monomials. Having said that, in our next class, we will discuss the various types of polynomials that we have. In the meantime, if you have questions for me, kindly drop them in the comment section as answers will be supplied to them. See you in our next class.